Welcome to a new video, and with this video I'm fulfilling a request. Someone was asking me how is the camera performance of the Huawei Nova 9 versus the iPhone XR or XR. So I think it's very interesting because I have both devices here to check this out. So let's get started. So let's check out the camera specs first, and what we can see here is pretty easy. We have a 12 megapixel back cam on the iPhone, that's it. And then we have a 50 megapixel main cam on the Nova 9, as well as an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle and two 2 megapixel sensors for depth and macro. And on the front, also probably not really a big surprise, 7 megapixels on the iPhone and 32 megapixels on the Nova 9. So pretty easy. Who will win here, is it? I think we'll start with the front-facing video. So this is the iPhone XR's front-facing video camera that can do only 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and this is now 1080p 30 frames per second because I'm working with a 30 timeline. HDR looks okay on screen, and the only problem that I see here with this one is stabilization. I don't see much of stabilization on screen, but probably it is recording with a good stabilization as well, because it's only 1080p. It should work. It's not very wide, so I have to hold it quite stretched out here. But yeah, this is the iPhone XR front-facing camera at 1080p 30 frames per second. So this is now the Huawei Nova 9 recording 4K 30 on the front-facing camera, because it has 32 megapixels, which is a very large sensor with lots and lots of pixels. So what about the HDR and stabilization? On screen it looks much more stable than the iPhone, but I think the iPhone has good stabilization. I see a little bit blown out highlights here in the background, so maybe the iPhone is a tad better in terms of HDR. Nevertheless, you get the higher resolution and I think also better front-facing video here on the Huawei Nova 9. What do you think? Write it down in the comment section. So this is now recording with the iPhone XR and the back main camera, the single one back main camera, 4K 30 frames per second. I think HDR should look fine here. Let's turn a little bit into the sun. They have some lens flare issues with their lenses in general on iPhones. This is including all the iPhones, even the newest iPhones that have this issue. So I could imagine this also having this issue. Otherwise, I think the quality is fine. You only have one lens, so it's a little bit cropped in more maybe than you would like to have, especially for vlogging. You want to have like maybe an ultra wide angle that you don't have here on the iPhone XR. Nevertheless, I think if you get it for very cheap money, then this might be not a bad vlogging kit, especially as you can use also an external microphone, just like I'm using here right now. You just need a lightning adapter to 3.5 millimeter. So what do you think about this quality here, 4K 30 on the back main camera? And now I'm recording with the main 50 megapixel camera on the Huawei Nova 9 with 4K 30 frames per second, and this one is also a very large sensor, bigger than the one in the iPhone. How is HDR looking here right now? How is stabilization and so on? Just like on the iPhone, I have the possibility to use an external microphone here for recording this audio. I just have to have a USB Type-C to 3.5 millimeter headphone adapter. So in general, I think I like the Nova 9's background blur a bit more, because it has, thanks to the larger sensor, a little bit more background blur, as well as the option, and this is the cool thing, not to only use the main camera, but you can switch to the ultra wide. Even the ultra wide has only 8 megapixels. I can clearly go here to the 8 megapixel ultra wide angle while recording 4K 30 frames per second. So what it's doing is basically either it is using a little bit more of the sensor than actually that is there, or it has a little bit more than 8 megapixels to be honest, or it is using only an upscaled 6 megapixel image for the 4K 8 megapixel image that you need for recording. But what do you think about the quality here? I think I like this ultra wide angle that you can use on this device, especially useful for vlogging. And I also have the possibility to zoom in, of course, if I want to certain things. Thanks to the 50 megapixel sensor, I have the possibility to show it to you as well. So I can zoom in. This is now 1x, it switched lenses, and I can go up to 2 times without any issues. I can go even further if I want to, up to 6 times, but then the quality degrades. I think up to like 2.5 times is still okay, and you don't see much of a degradation in terms of quality. But in general, I think this is the better setup, especially as the Huawei Nova 9 you can get already for 250 euros, and the iPhone I think is a little bit more expensive, or maybe at the same kind of price level if you get it cheap used. But still, you get a more flexible camera setup on the Huawei Nova 9, and I think also for vlogging the better device. What do you think about the video quality here? We will take a look at the photos right now. Go with the Nova 9 always on the left and the iPhone XR always on the right, and we start off with night mode. Big difference. I couldn't see anything, so the iPhone XR is pretty accurate here, but the Nova 9 is just making out of nighttime daylight, which is like a big difference, as you can see here. It's not 100% sharp for sure, but you can see what's going on, and this is like a day and night difference. When it comes to selfies, I would say, the clear winner is the Nova 9 here. I took a little older selfie here. You can see my hairstyle is different, but still the sharpness, the detail level is just a bit higher than on the iPhone XR. Though the iPhone XR is not doing anything worse here, but you can see the overblown highlights in the background, so it has a bit of weaker HDR, and I don't like the too kind of yellow face that I get here on the iPhone for some reason, where it's much more natural, but maybe a little bit too red on the Nova 9 here. But in general, the Nova 9 selfie cam is better. Main cam, however, is kind of a mixed bag. On the iPhone XR, it looks to be a little bit more detailed and sharper eventually. So especially here around the chimneys and where the trees are, you can see a little bit more of details, and you can see the number there a little bit clearer than on the Nova 9. But most of this is, I think, done due to iPhone's processing and sharpening things up, because what you can see as well is HDR, both is pretty good, but we have a bit of more yellowish kind of hue or magenta kind of hue here, with the darker kind of blue in the sky, where it's much more bluish kind of and more poppy colors on the Nova 9. And when we take a look at the background here I think the iPhone falls apart because it has some kind of white haze going on, and I think the HDR did not such a good job here, especially with the bright areas where the Nova 9 kept them nice and sharp. Also doing a little bit of oversharp, and you can see the processing here, but you can see also a bit more detail levels here, especially in those, and it kept the contrast a bit down, where here it's trying to brighten things up to such a level that it's just unpleasant on the iPhone XR. But overall, I think a bit more sharpness on the iPhone XR, and a bit better contrast and HDR on the Nova 9. In this shot, we can clearly see the difference in terms of colors. We have much more punchy colors on the Nova 9, and for some reason, the same scene, the iPhone XR has much less saturated greens in the grass, which is almost unnatural, because this is not how it looked like. This is also not so punchy here, but it is kind of like a mixture of both. Not so punchy like this, but not so desaturated like on the iPhone XR for sure. And when we take a look at the detail levels, we can clearly see again that the details are much more there on the iPhone XR, though I think it is just sharpening applied. When you take a look at the details itself, it is just, I think it looks like sharpening is applied to the iPhone XR. Maybe the lens is a bit sharper as well. So this is what you can get and see here. When we can come up with close-up shots, of course the Nova 9's very large sensor size helps to create this very creamy bokeh that we can see here, that the iPhone XR cannot compete with. Also, I think the colors are a bit more pleasant here on the Nova 9 than on the iPhone XR, because it is yellow, and I think it is a bit of orangish going on the iPhone XR, and we can see the noise already here creeping in that we don't have so much on the Nova 9. So for close-up shots, the Nova 9 has an edge, not only with the main camera sensor, also I could get a little bit closer than on the iPhone XR. Notice this as well. And the iPhone XR only has one sensor, but of course the Nova 9 has the advantage. I can go to the macro sensor and can get this shot. It's 2 megapixel macro, it's not the best, but I can get a lot closer than on the iPhone XR. Make out of this what you want. And talking about different sensors, here you can see the difference between the iPhone XR sensor the one sensor that you have there, and the possibility on the Nova 9 to have an ultra wide angle here. It's not the best ultra wide angle, it's pretty soft, but you have like the whole building in the shot, where here you can just see a little bit of the balconies, not even all of the balconies, just like 1.5 maybe on the iPhone XR. But it is definitely sharper, and you get a little bit more information than on the ultra wide angle of the Nova 9, as you can see what's here on the side, for example, which you cannot here on the Nova 9. Though in general, yeah, for the perspective, I think the Nova 9 has a slight advantage if you want to have a dramatic effect, even if you don't want to have too much details in the shot. From the colors, I would say, yeah, almost on par. I think the slightly brighter exposure on the iPhone XR. When we come up to zoom shots, what we can clearly see is, I think it's roughly 6 times zoom on the iPhone XR with its main sensor, and we have 10 times zoom on the Nova 9. But when you take a look at it, yeah, detail levels both are there, both look very processed. If I zoom in here, you can clearly see the iPhone XR at 100% lowness looks like the Nova 9 zoomed out and 10 times. If I zoom in here, you can see, yeah, if I would zoom in here, it will probably look the same as you can see here on the iPhone XR, so not much of a difference. The reason is both are basically creating a 12 megapixel file out of this, and the only difference is here the Nova 9 has a bit more pixels to work with to get this 10 times zoom, but basically what you get is the same output, just a little bit zoomed in on the Nova 9, where the iPhone XR has it a little bit zoomed out. But this is basically it in terms of zoom. But you have like the zoom reachability on the Nova 9. You can get a bit closer and get the same quality out of it as the iPhone XR would get out of its zoom. So it's not really an advantage, I would say, for the Nova 9 here. But the ultra wide angle is definitely an advantage. And yeah, zoomed in shots here, another zoom shot on the Nova 9, this time not the highest zoom level, but like the 2 times zoom level. And comparing this with the iPhone XR to show you where the difference is here in terms of quality and so on. And as you can see here, yes, the quality is degrading a bit on the Nova 9 because it's a 2 times zoom, but we have very nice details overall. It's a bit over processed in terms of colors, much more punchy colors, and you can see much more details here on the iPhone XR for sure. But still, it's, I think, a good thing. Let's look at the car here, for example. You can clearly see the license plate a little bit better here on the Nova 9 than on the iPhone XR. So this zoom is definitely just a crop on the main sensor, but it has some advantages. Otherwise, we have more poppy colors in the background as well, where the iPhone looks a bit more natural. And yeah, this looks a bit processed on the Nova 9 for sure. So yeah, overall, I would give it to the Nova 9 for flexibility. For quality, however, the iPhone XR is still holding up pretty nicely, and I don't see much of a reason not to use the iPhone XR when you have the Nova 9. So they're basically on par with their main cameras, where I would give the slight edge to the iPhone XR with a bit more sharpness on the photos, especially if you want to crop into the photos. This might make a lot of sense. I would give the Nova 9 the slight edge in HDR, and if you want to have Instagram ready photos that doesn't look so natural but very Instagram ready, the Nova 9 does this out of the box, where the iPhone is a bit more natural by default for sure. So yeah, you have to decide which one you like a bit more. I tend towards the Nova 9 at the end of the day because of flexibility with the ultra wide angle, and especially in video mode, which I really like. This is where the Nova 9 I think beats the iPhone XR. iPhones tend to usually be better in video, so everyone says. But in this case, I tend towards the Nova 9 overall, but it's a very slim win for the Nova 9 over the iPhone XR. And this speaks for Apple doing a good job on their iPhone cameras. What do you think? Write it down in the comments. That's everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.